Hi guys, it's the Marathon Row. What a cool announcement. It's also at the end of a really big day of work for those games athletes, and I just thought I'd put out a little video, quite detailed, to go through a few things on the machine, but first to the whiteboard of how to approach this workout and some of the flags to plant. So I've got 6 things that we need to go through. The first is the distance itself. Then I want to talk about the mental and the physical components. I want to talk about the machine setup. I also want to talk about specifically sweat and hands, and then we'll talk about fuel, and finally pacing and speed. So the distance, 42,195 meters, a marathon. This will obviously be the longest that most of you have ever rowed before, unless you're a real freak and you've done the 100-kilometer row, which is a whole different story. So 42K is about 2.5, 3 hours, 3 hours and 20 for some of those slower athletes. So the main thing is it's a long time on the machine. After you get that first hour done, you're still going to have about 26 kilometers to go. So really prepare all those other things for that distance. Let's talk about, first of all, the mental component. Put the physical aside. Everyone at the games is incredibly fit, and that is one component that we can talk about in a moment. This is a mental workout. The moment you start to drift, the moment you give up, you will cascade down the leaderboard. I've done this workout myself. I did it a year ago. The average speed I did was, I think, 152.7 split, which was around 2 hours and 37-ish. The world record is down, I think, at 2 hours and 20, about 145, 146 pace. But you're on that machine for a long period of time. The biggest thing that I found was mentally, I had to be in the correct place every single stroke. Otherwise, I just lost concentration and it felt much, much harder. I would think about, what approach are you going to have? Are you the type of person that likes to play games? One of the things I do is I sometimes count strokes. Oh, can I get it to 69 strokes in this kilometer? Can I get it to 71 strokes in this kilometer? Are you someone that likes to think about, oh, I'm going to do some mental arithmetic, or I'm going to do some sort of game that doesn't require too much mental energy, but that keeps you focused with your eyes on the monitor and keeps that brain engaged so you don't start daydreaming to outer space? The second thing is, don't overthink it. You can get really bogged down in, oh, what's my projected pace, or what speed am I doing? Where am I on that Concept 2 race calculator? Where am I? Where am I? The moment you start to think about that, you'll start chasing the numbers. And when you chase the numbers and you feel a little bit like you're on the edge for that huge workout time, you're gonna blow up somewhere by chasing this target that may seem out of reach. So getting that balance right on the kind of mental approach is really, really important. What I would offer is that you focus on your rhythm, you focus on keeping a calm mind, focusing on each single stroke, and having just a few macro goals, like roughly I want to see roughly this pace, roughly I want to be feeling roughly this sort of perceived exertion. I would use that as your strategy. So the other thing is that I want to talk about between the mental versus the physical is that when that body starts to feel a little bit gnarly, and it will because you've been on that machine for a long period of time, just have a few little coping strategies that you can use whilst you're rowing, whether that's sitting up a little bit more and relaxing, whether that's taking a few deep breaths, whatever it may be. Have some coping strategies for things that you know you're going to encounter. One of them will be that body, those soft tissues feeling a bit awkward. One of them might be feeling really thirsty, how that will affect you. One of them might be feeling really, really tired. And if you're feeling really, really tired, literally at that wall that you sometimes hear in the marathon, with rowing, it's so important never to stop. Do not think that by stopping and even giving yourself a 10-second break, it will make things easier. It will not. You'll feel much worse because of it. What I would suggest is that you just really back off that pace, even if it's like 30 or 40 splits, just backing off that pace for a minute, maybe even 2 minutes, and then coming back onto a nicer pace that you can sustain. That will stand you in much better stead than stopping regularly at intervals. Cool. Let's talk about the machine setup. At the end of this video, I go through in a bit more detail on the machine, but the 3 main things that you should think about are the feet, the seat, and then the hands. With the feet, making sure that those straps are set around the balls of the feet, and also making sure that they're quite low down, as low as you can possibly make them, that the straps are still around just below that big toe. Have a look at the video later on to show what I go through. As well as the feet, the seat. Really, really important that you're comfortable in that seat and you're prepared. Pay attention closely to the tips I give later on how to get that seat sliding appropriately with different layers of materials, and also how to get that little seat pad or towel so that you're nice and comfortable. The hands. This is the most important thing with the setup of the machine. You want to try and make sure that you have at least a couple layers, whether that's tape or gloves, that can just take away that sort of gnarliness from those hot spots that you might get on the grip. Also thinking specifically with the sweat in the hands about having nice big sweatbands, or even wrapping a t-shirt around with some tape just to avoid that sweat dripping down the arm coming into those hands. Again, I go through this in a lot more detail towards the end of the video. Fuel. Really important that we get small amounts of fuel spread across the workout. When I did this about a year ago, I actually didn't take any fuel on board, just rode straight through, no water, no fuel. That's fine if you're doing it as a standalone workout and trying to chase a time. For this, at the games, at the last workout of the first day, I would not recommend that. Try and get a few sips of water, a few bites of a bar or an energy gel or something on board throughout the workout, and you can kind of preset a few little pit stops and also have a few bits of spare energy and fluid so that you can take a little bit more on board if you need to. Again, I give you a few little tips and tricks as how to do that throughout the workout. Watch towards the end. The final thing to think about is your pacing. I really wouldn't pay too much attention to the numbers. It's sort of pointless, unless this is your sport, indoor rowing, it's kind of pointless to think about what split should I be doing. As a rough rule of thumb, when I did it, my 2K was probably around 6 minutes and 10 seconds, and my 5K was around 16 minutes and 20 seconds, and I did that in about a 1:52, 1:53 pace. That 1:52, 1:53 pace is roughly the sort of intensity that I was doing my volume training at. So as a rough rule of thumb, this marathon row, your average split will be somewhere around the split that you do your 45 to 60 minute long rows at, maybe a few splits slower. Again, I wouldn't dial in the numbers too much because you don't know how that body's going to be feeling after the first 3 events. And also, you don't want to try and push and go too deep in this because you've only got 1 day to recover for the rest of the competition. So have a little think about, first of all, the rhythm that you're going to be rowing in, trying to distribute that energy correctly. And what I mean by that is the first hour of the workout, you should be feeling pretty good. You should be going through that 60 minutes feeling as though the soft tissues are a little bit tight, yes, because of that triple extension movement, but actually aerobically, you're in a pretty solid place. You're just breathing, that heart rate is in a nice position, and you feel as though you could kind of go for a few more hours. You shouldn't be feeling at an hour like you're done and that you can't hang on for any more, because another 90 minutes, 2 hours of that, a mushroom cloud is going to explode and you are not going to be in a great place for that last hour. So really ensure that the body is moving nicely, aerobically you're in a good place, and you're not overdriving that stroke or overworking that stroke, trying to get lots of power per stroke. Look at the end of this video and look at the rhythm that I try and create, and look at the rate that I use. You should be thinking a little bit on the lower side of the rate, so it should be around maybe 22, 24 strokes per minute. I would not be going above 24, 26 strokes per minute. That would be a bit too fast and too many strokes for that 3-hour time frame. Also, a little bit lower down, there'll be some people that are trying to think maybe I should go at 16, 18 strokes per minute and have that little rest with the handle in between. I would strongly dissuade you from doing that again. The reason being is that wheel will die down and you'll have to pick up a really heavy wheel throughout the workout, every single stroke. So those are the sort of 6 main things how I would approach it. Distance, it's a long way. Have that in your mind. Know you're going to be there for a long time. It's just the way it is. Mental versus physical. I'm going to come back to that later, but it's much more mental than it is physical. Machine setup. Get this right. If you don't get this machine setup right, you're going to be an hour in and you're going to be really kicking yourself that you didn't do this. Sweat and hands, pay particular attention to that. Also, if some of you want to use a headband so the sweat doesn't drop into your eyes, I would go for that. Make sure that you've got fuel ready, small little bits pre-prepared, ready to go. Also make sure you're doing it in between strokes and not taking breaks. And lastly, pacing and speed. Know the numbers, but don't focus on the numbers. Fine, so 42,195 meters, 4 time, holding a handle in one place on the Concept 2 rowing machine. That word, mental. This is about who wants it. This is about who can stay mature as an athlete. This is about who can just deliver the performance and putting everything together in a nice, coherent way. When you get all those little things right, you can go from A to B as fast as possible, and that will give you your best time. Enjoy, watch now as I go through things on the machine, and have fun with this workout. Right, the marathon. We've talked already about the things to think about. You've got those 6 bullet points clear in your mind. Let's now look at the machine. Now, what I really want to focus on first of all is that we need to get this thing set up correctly, specifically for the marathon distance. We've already said it's going to be an incredibly long time, okay? You're going to be on that machine for 2 hours 40, maybe 3 hours, maybe a bit 3 hours and 20, depending on how fast you row. Now, with that huge amount of time on the machine, that means that your soft tissues are likely not used to rowing. We know that that movement, that triple extension movement, is uncommon for human beings. And so with that, you get a little bit of soft tissue gnarliness. The main 3 culprits: thoracic spine, hip flexors, and hamstrings. In the marathon, that really kind of starts to exacerbate after about an hour, hour and a half, and you can really get yourself into trouble if you're not prepared. So the first thing to do with this machine is actually to try and increase the distance from your feet to your seat, okay? So if you're normally rowing on like a level 4 or a level 3 on the foot plate, just drop that down as much as you feel comfortable so that the straps are still around the balls of the feet. They should just be below that big toe, but you want to try and have as much distance as possible from your feet to the seat. And what that does is it allows the hamstrings and the hip flexors just to offload a little bit. So when you're sliding forward, you're just a little bit more free and you have a little bit more room to move. That offloads that whole kinetic chain and just allows you to be able to cover that distance with the body feeling in a bit of a stronger position. Cool. So once the feet are set up down low, we can pay our attention to the seat. Now, you may or may not be allowed to use a seat pad or a towel. I would try and recommend putting at least something soft there, whether it's a t-shirt or something that just helps give you an extra little barrier. We know with mountain walkers, when they go mountain walking for long distances, they have those very clever socks which have 2 layers that run against each other. So avoid the booty shorts, avoid having just 1 pair of shorts on. Try and get a few layers between your butt and the seat, so when it moves, it's actually the fabric that's moving in between each thing. A seat pad like a towel, folded in half and then folded in half again, put on top of the seat, works perfectly. You can also slightly wedge it so that the back of the seat, so that towel that you put on there or seat pad, is slightly higher than the front, and that just helps maintain that strong posture, getting those shoulders in front of the hips as you take a really good rowing stroke for those few hours you're going to be on the machine. Good, so that's the setup of the machine. The next thing to talk about is the handle. Now, really, really important in the marathon that we're gripping the handle almost with no grip whatsoever. So you want to just be having really, really loose fingers, and you want to find the kind of the easiest place just to be able to glide the handle forward and just hang off the handle. If we've got lots of tension in that handle, you're going to pay for it very quickly. With that, just have a little feel of the handle at rest, maybe even taking a few strokes, and mindfully just think, where is the force going through my hand? The reason for that is you can just start to feel where on the hand you're going to maybe get some soft parts and where you're going to get some hot spots when you're going to be on that machine for a long period of time. I would strongly recommend some hand care with this. Now what I mean by that is gloves, absolutely. If you want some tape, absolutely. The extra component to think about is sweat. It's going to be warm after 2.5, 3 hours of rowing, and you're going to sweat a lot. That sweat, as soon as it gets into the hands, game over. You're going to have sweat all over the handle, you're going to start slipping around, and it will just become frustrating. So round the wrists, really important. Try and get a wristband or even 2 sets of wristbands so the forearm's covered. So as that sweat from the arm is dripping down to the forearm, you've got it covered and cut off there at the wrist so that it doesn't get into the hand. So hand care, protection, absolutely important. Just like we talked about those 2 layers rubbing together, try and see if you could maybe even get that on the hand. So maybe a layer of tape and then a glove over the top of it. Really don't underestimate the force that your hands will cumulatively be put through for that amount of time. No one is going to be used to being on the machine for 2.5, 3 hours. So your hands are definitely not going to be used to that. Fine, so we've talked about that. A really important thing to talk about now is the monitor, okay? Now, I would really try and think about in your mind of which screen you like to look at the most. Is it the force curve that you like to look at? Is it the simple numbers you like to look at? Is it the complicated or the busy numbers that you like to look at? Have a think and use that as a focus point. The other thing, if you're allowed to touch the monitor in your event, at the games, if you're allowed to touch some buttons, remember that those 5 buttons down the right-hand side, those grey buttons, they correspond to a different screen. So, as a little bit of a game and a bit of a mental way to keep you engaged and focused, you can even maybe every kilometre or so, just cycle through the screens, little touch, and then off we go again. When you're looking at the monitor, it's really important not to think about what distance there is to go. This is going to be a huge workout, and you need to go to that mental happy place, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. For now, let's just take a few little strokes and just try and think about that rhythm that we're going to get into. Now that we've talked about the machine setup and a little bit about the monitor, it's important we now talk about fuel. Now, the marathon I have actually done myself. I did that about a year ago, and I did that camel, as we call it in the British rowing team, and that's essentially with no water and no food. It's fine, it's doable. You don't have to drink, you don't have to eat. It's 2.5 hours, your body can cope with it. However, the Wednesday of the games, it's that 4th event of the day, and you're going to have loads of things to do later in the week. It would be really stupid not to take on some sort of fuel and some sort of liquid during the row. How to do that? Now, lots of people will try and have strategic breaks, really short breaks. I would strongly try and dissuade you to do that. The moment you stop on the machine, the flywheel dies and you're playing catch up with the meters and with the seconds. That is how you will lose a lot of time very quickly. Let's have a look at essentially little strategies that you can do. First of all, water bottle. So have this obviously somewhere that's within reach as you flow through the stroke. Next thing, little bar or something. So you can already have this pre-packaged like the Team Sky cyclists do. They already have it kind of unwrapped and ready to go, broken up into small pieces, and that can live here in a little bit of your sort of foot stretcher in between the handle and the feet. You can grab that as you slide up between strokes if you're quite good at that. If any of you have got those little reservoirs with a little tube, that's great as well. One little caveat with that is to try and not rely on it. I've seen people drinking 3-4 litres in a 2-hour stretch. You don't necessarily need to be taking on that amount of water for that event. Try and just figure out how you can do this on the fly. So obviously have the water bottle already with the cap off. And you want to try and think about what the weight of that water bottle is, because if you're trying to go all the way forward and picking up that water bottle and it's really heavy, it's probably not the best. So what you want to be doing is having half a litre or something like that, something that you think you can definitely drink in the entire marathon row, but also something that you can carry along the way, maybe even 2 or 3 bottles. Having that water bottle probably around your feet so that you can get it on the way forward. So something so simple like that, a brief pause just before you take a stroke, that'll make sure that you only maybe lose 1 or 2 seconds rather than unclipping the feet, taking a drink of water, putting it back down, or even worse, trying to get it really quickly, spilling it and then causing yourself a massive mess. So just have a few of those there. Make sure that the weight of the bottle is enough. Seems like such a pedantic thing, but you need to make sure that it's light enough that you can pick up and drink it, but also heavy enough that you just don't go spilling it everywhere. Same with the bars. So if you have little bits of food broken up, have little kind of maybe a stack of bar pieces, just sliding forward and then popping that in the mouth to eat as you take strokes in between. So fueling during this row is a really important thing. In the marathon, when you run, pretty simple. You can just run along, grab something, drink it, etc., etc. With rowing, because you've got that handle in both hands all the time, it's very tricky. So make sure you have your food there by your foot plate. Make sure you have the water bottle by your feet. I wouldn't overcomplicate this too much. It's not going to be essential. The people that are going to win this marathon row or do really well are the people that are fit, the people that are good at rowing, and the people that are efficient with their pacing and with their energy distribution and mechanics. So it's not going to be the people that can drink the water the best or fuel the most correctly. They are, however, important things to think about. Fine. Let's move these to one side. And get back to rowing. The most important thing with the rowing stroke during this marathon row is of your connected length, okay? I'll say that again, connected length. You need to make sure you're connecting as close to the front of the wheel as possible and keeping that connection all the way to the finish of the stroke. It doesn't have to be a lot of force on the machine. In fact, it's going to be hardly anything, just a light connection all the way to the back. The other thing is how you connect to that machine. We really need to dwell on this. The big muscles have to do the work. The legs, glutes, and back, they do most of the work. If the arms start working, if that back starts to open, that's when we start to lose our efficiency. And in that last hour of the workout, you are not going to be in a great place. So, focusing on just a few things. We've already moved that seat to feet height ratio on the machine, so we've got a bit more room to get our shoulders in front of the hips. I want you to be sitting up nice and tall, not slouching down, getting that curve back. And we're really just trying to use that slide to do the work for us, okay? So I don't want you to be seeing lots of people doing this. Shouldn't be having lots of these short, sharp, high rate strokes. They should be nice and long, getting that seat as close to the feet as you can. Doesn't matter if those heels come up, if the back's in a good position and the shoulders are in front of the hips. Really long strokes in a strong position. Those mechanics of the workout is what's going to really drive that overall average speed. If you're a fit individual, if you are good at rowing, if you've done the training, you will find this absolutely fine compared to your competitors. The main thing is to mentally stay in that rhythm that gives you the speed. The moment you come out of that rhythm, that's when you'll start to struggle. Let's see that rhythm in full force once again. Now it's time to talk about the pacing of the workout. This, I would actually argue, is probably the least important thing in the workout. I wouldn't worry about the numbers at all. I know that's the output that people want, but really the things that come first are making sure that the machine is set up correctly, making sure that you're rowing really long, as we've talked about, making sure that you're rating appropriately and getting the most out of your body, and then making sure that you're mentally in a place where you can consistently deliver the same stroke over and over again for a long period of time. If you can do those things correctly, that will put yourself into the best possible situation to get the best outcome and speed as possible. However, we still need to have a rough idea in your mind about speed. So when I did this workout about a year ago, I think my average speed was about 1:53 pace, so 1 minute and 50, I think it was 52.7 per 500 meters. And that made the total time around 2 hours and 30 something, so just under 2 hours and 40. I think that we will see the top times of this workout around 2 hours and 40, maybe a little bit, a fraction slower, given everything that they've done in the day before. And I think that we'll also see people up that 3.5 hour mark. And those will be the people that probably are not very good at rowing, maybe not the fittest in the long time period. So that sort of 3.5 hour time period really fatigues that aerobic system. It will also be the people who are very inefficient in the rowing stroke. But most importantly, you will find one or two surprise names, I think, that will just get everything completely wrong in terms of the tactics of whether it's the pacing, whether it's the fueling of the body, or just mentally not being able to be in a nice, calm place. So have that in your mind. It's going to be roughly 3 hours plus or minus 20 minutes. Now let's look at some splits. I would say that that 2 minute split, which is 2 minutes per 500 meters, gets you in through the door at 2 hours and 48 minutes. So remember, it's going to be time on the machine, time sitting down. I wouldn't worry about what split should I be doing or how fast should I be rowing. I would focus on what's the best rate that I need to be rowing at to get the best return of speed. And for most people, that rate will be in the kind of lower end of the range, around 22 to 24, maybe 25 strokes a minute. What you want to be feeling is you want to have some time in between strokes, and you also want to feel not rushed whatsoever, but that each stroke flows into the next one. So you can listen to the wheel. What you want is that sound of the wheel starting to quiet down and then accelerating once again. So let's have a listen. Good, so you can just hear that wheel accelerate and then die. Accelerate and then die. You won't be able to do 3 hours up here. That's a bit too quick. And also, the other thing that I don't want to see is I don't want really, really low rates at sort of 16, 18 with the old. That may seem like a logical solution to trying to relax the body and to get through the distance, but cumulatively it's a really bad strategy, because what you're doing is you're letting that wheel and that fan die down, so every stroke you have to pick up another heavy wheel. It would be like trying to do a very light deadlift, let's say a 40 kilo deadlift, and just doing singles, drop, singles, drop, singles, drop for a long period of time. That's slightly better strategy if you're doing that. It's just a few touch and go reps, drop, rest. A few touch and go reps, drop, rest. Because that bounce in between reps of a deadlift, similar to just keeping that wheel moving, allows you to cumulatively do a little bit less work, okay? So let's really dwell on that point. By making sure you're in a rhythm where you're picking up the fan every stroke, you will end up doing less kind of work over the 2.5, 3 hour distance. And if you really let the fan die, you have to pick up that dead wheel every stroke. Cool, let's take a few more and just see that again. Okay, you've seen how to do it, you've got everything in place. Make sure that you get through all of those bullet points, you're set up and prepared correctly, and then you have that mind focused on what you need to deliver. This is a big workout, and the good thing afterwards is that you can compare yourself on the Concept 2 world record leaderboard, and it will be a fantastic event once you've got through it. Deliver that performance that you know you're capable of. You're fit, you're strong, you can deliver that big performance on the day. Ensure that you get every single bullet point correct, and the accumulation of all those marginal gains will get you across that finish line and onto the leaderboard in a place that you deserve. Have fun. 42,195 meters for time. Enjoy.